The main purpose of this lesson is to illustrate manual note entry as opposed to automatic duration. While doing this, we will also discuss the following things: the different ways to move our cursor around, how to adjust the value of our notes after we've entered them, how to save time by highlighting more than one note, and last, how easy it is to correct our mistakes. If you still have the screen open from the previous lesson, we will use that. If not, open a new file.
Now the automatic duration works really fine if you only have a one-note melody. What if you wanted to add some bass notes or some chords to go along with that melody? Then you're going to run into trouble. Let's go ahead and add a one note plus maybe a bass note or some chords to it, and I'll show you what happens. Let's go ahead and take our arrow key and let's go to measure 3. Our one note will be 0, which is the E string. Move down with our arrows. Let's put a bass note of a C in there, which is our 3rd string on our 5th, or our 3rd fret on our 5th string. And let's turn this into a C chord. So let's put a 2nd fret on the 4th string, 0 fret on the 3rd string, and a 1 fret on the 2nd string. Now you have a chord. If you want to go ahead and play a melody note along with that, what you're going to end up with when you go to arrange your melody, let's go ahead 2 steps over and add a G note to that. You see what has happened here is you've taken your chord, and every note of your chord has now become a quarter note, and your melody note has turned in to a dotted half note. Let's move on over and add another note. We'll add the F note, which is 1, and then let's go over 2 more and add a 0. With automatic duration, you can see that we've ended up with a chord, which is all quarter notes, and 3 melody notes, all quarter notes. If we put our cursor on our first note of this measure, go up and hit play, this is what it's going to sound like. What if you wanted that chord to sound throughout the whole measure? What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to manually put in the chord as whole notes. So you would put your cursor over the 5th string and you would click on a whole note. You see what's happened here? This is turned into a whole note. Go up to that 4th string, hit it with the cursor, turn that into a whole note. Go up to the 3rd string, do the same thing, and the 2nd string, do the same thing. So now what you've done is you've put a chord plus your melody notes, and it would sound like this. Make sure your cursor's over where you want to start playing. Hit the play button. And now you have a chord that rings throughout the measure while you're playing the right quarter notes. It's obvious that during automatic duration, the computer isn't going to be able to do this for you. And this is where you're going to have to come in, and you're going to have to take a look at the notation and decide exactly how you want to arrange your music. Now let's take this one step further. Let's go ahead and move our cursor over to measure 4. You can use the arrow, forward arrow, to move it over, but you can also take your mouse and put it right where you want it. If you notice while you're moving your mouse, if you look up here on your ruler, you'll see that little line moving from side to side. So you can actually take your cursor And you can start that note wherever you want. And of course, we're going to start it on the first note of that measure and just click, and you're there. Let's go ahead and put the same melody note back in. 0, 3, excuse me, 0, 3, 1, and 0. You notice that I made a mistake. Whenever you make a mistake, you can always go backwards and correct that by putting the right note in. I'd put a 0 in there, but you can always go back and put the right note in by just clicking in the right note. But notice what has happened up here in our notation. We are no longer in automatic duration. We have started using our notes up here. And I was using the whole note. So every single note that I have placed in here has become a whole note. We need to fix that. So we need to go back and click on the 0 note. We want all these to be quarter notes. Let's go up and just click on the quarter note. See how it's changed it to a quarter note? Let's do the same thing with the 3. Turn it into a quarter note. And actually, we want to do the same thing with the other 2, but you can take and you can hold the mouse down and highlight both of them, click the quarter note, and we've turned them both in to quarter notes. Let's go ahead and let's enter in some bass notes here. We'll bring our arrow down to the 5th string, click on it. Still using the key of C right now, like I did in the last measure. Let's put a 3 in there so it sounds right. And let's just put a part of a chord in here. We'll put the 2 in here. Here's part of our chord. I'll move on over with our arrow. And let's go clear over below the 1. And we could put a 3 in on the 5th string. We could move our arrow over below the 0. And we could put a 2 in over here. Obviously, you see we put quarter notes in here. We're going to have to go back and we're going to have to put the right duration in. It's obvious that these 2 notes are going to be a half note because we want them to play all the way over to this note. So we'll go up. We could do these one at a time, but do you see how I've clicked on that and highlighted both of them? And then we'll hit the half note. And you see how we've got a half note here. Now these 2 notes, their duration is correct. We have 2 quarter notes here. Let's just see what this sounds like. Well, that sounds harmonic. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but you get the general idea. So we can go back and we can change each one of these notes to get the right duration, or if we make a mistake, if we accidentally take this note and make it an 8th note, of course that was a mistake, we can go right back up and we can hit the right note, a half note, and suddenly we've got the right note. Now this is the second method of entering notes. Our first method was using the computer to put in an automatic duration. The second method is for us to go back in and give individual notes the proper durations manually. And as we get into arranging music, we're going to use a combination of both of these. Now before we end this lesson, it's pretty obvious that we don't want to save the work we just did. In the next lesson, we will discuss how to save our work. For right now, we can just click the X up here, and you'll see a little screen pop up, and it'll remind you, do you want to save what you've just done? And we're not going to save this, so we're just going to say no.